Welcome to the Pickup Korea podcast. And today I have, of course, more listener questions as usual. And so if you have any questions you want answered, you want to be covered in this podcast, go ahead and shoot an email to the email address below. Or you can also join the Facebook group where you can post your questions. And I often have a little thread about that as well. So, first of all, Korea's finally hitting spring. The weather is insanely good, really, really good. Sunny but cool. It's not yet humid yet. And so it's really my favorite part of the year here in Korea because, the winters can be kind of brutal, pretty cold. So, it's a lot of like indoor game, big malls, big shopping complexes, major subway stations, indoor cafes, bars, clubs. But summertime, while being good, it's very humid, so you can only really be out. If you're a sweater like me, then really, after even a few minutes outside, you can start drenching in sweat depending on how high the humidity is. However, right now you have that nice sunny weather without the humidity, with the breeze. It's perfect. You can be out for hours and hours and hours. Me and a couple of the students, previous clients, were out yesterday, 3, 4, 5, 6 hours. I think I was out 5 or 6 hours yesterday. A couple of them were out for a few hours. And so you can really be out all day, not even sweat, not even, just extremely comfortable weather to be walking around out on the streets, hitting it up, enjoying the vibes, right? And so, and of course, girls are dressing in more skirts, short shorts. So it's really that kind of time you want to be out, anyways, right? So today I figured we'll go over one of the first questions, which was here. In China, especially northern China, brief sexual encounters are saw as being bad. Okay, how is it in Korea? Do you make it clear in the beginning what you want? How do you handle questions? Do you only want to have sex with me? What are we now after sex? Okay, good. All right, so the first part of the question is basically, is sex seen as a bad thing in Korea? Well, okay, in some regard, there is a Confucius culture, so really discussing things explicitly is seen as bad. It is seen as crude, low class, dirty, sleazy, and things along those lines. However, I can say younger generations are really have changed a lot. You'll even hear them talking about sex at cafes and, going into sexual escapade stories, which even 5, 10 years ago you didn't hear. So there is a change in the culture. However, overall, still explicitly discussing these things is seen as a little lower class. It's better, to actually engage in these behaviors before discussing them, right? And maybe discuss them after such sexual encounters, right? And another part of the question is, do you make it clear what you want? So here's the thing. Yeah, I mean, sexual encounters are very common in Korea. At this point, girls in their 20s, the majority, or at least I would say at least half of them have probably had one night stands, maybe brief flings or sex partners or online dates or nightclub pools, day game. While being less common is getting more common. So they might have met a guy on the street. You talk to a lot of attractive girls, and they're getting hit up nonstop on the street by Korean guys. This is a common thing. While people say it isn't, it really is. If you're talking to attractive girls, they're getting approached quite a lot, right? And even yesterday, I'm out and about. I'm about to approach a girl, another Korean guy approaches her. So this is something that happens to attractive girls, anytime, anywhere, any place. So that you have to get that through your head, right? As far as telling them what you want, no, because you will express interest, you will flirt, you will express implicitly your sexual attraction, sexual vibe. However, you will not explicitly state such things as mentioned before, because of the cultural nuance, right? In addition, how do you address things after sex? Okay, so after sex really, it really depends on where you want to take the relationship and also her, position as well, right? And so oftentimes, you'll really keep the same frame you had before sex, right? So, you're getting to know her, you're interested, you're flirty, and if you're interested in continuing that, you're going to really have the same frame after sex, right? You're not going to suddenly say, let's jump into a relationship. You're not going to suddenly act fully aloof, most likely, right? So it's sort of keeping that balance between interested and not fully, what would you say, not fully gushy or needy or anything like that, right? And so if they do ask you explicitly, what are we? Then it is best to be honest, If you're really interested in dating her long term, you should say that, but still let's meet more, let's have time to get to know each other because, one encounter, one sex, and then saying you want a relationship, you don't really know that yourself, right? However, you may be interested in such an exclusive monogamous relationship. In that case, say that and say, yeah, let's get to know each other. Let's see how this goes, but I am interested in that too. If not, then say, you want to get to know her a little more and keep things open. No pressure, no stress. You do like her. You do want to get to know her more. You want to go on more dates with her. You like the time around her, but don't tie yourself to any commitments, right? So there are two ways ultimately to play that out, and it really depends on your goals and what she is into as well, right? So that should answer that question. Okay, all right, next question here. Is there a trick to avoiding girls deflecting? Almost like they don't hear words that I'm saying. Okay, so yeah, so this person's talking about girls not really responding off the initial approach, right? So sort of acting aloof, sort of ignoring you when you initially approach, right? And this is something that is quite more common in Korea, even in places like Japan as well, right? Where you approach a girl and it's almost like she doesn't even look at you, doesn't even acknowledge your presence, so to speak, right? Or even maybe look at you once and then kind of like put the head down or look straight ahead or even ignore your approaching, right? I mean, I even had one of those today where I go approach a girl, really, really good looking and everything, but as I approach her, as I go into the approach, she doesn't even look at me, doesn't even acknowledge me, doesn't even act like I'm there, right? And so, with those, really all you can do in that situation is continue talking, continue party talking, continue vibing, hold your frame, act like, show that people listen to you, show that that you're not needing anything and that you're used to people responding to you and that you're expressing yourself comfortably without needing anything and you have that frame that's rock solid, right? Other than that, there's nothing you can do. So either she'll catch on to that, she'll say, oh, he's laid back, he's cool, he's solid, he's strong, he's expressing himself without needing anything. And she'll, maybe the ice shield will melt, maybe it won't, right? But you can sometimes get them to start responding through this, right? But other times they'll just keep ignoring you and walk ahead, right? And so those are the two ways that'll play out, and that's how to play that situation out. In the West, it's not as common. It's more we have this kind of script that people are it's sort of necessary to respond to people who are talking to you rather than fully ignoring them, rather than just walking by. We have this kind of Good Samaritan cultural script where if somebody talks to you, you need to at least give them a brief time of day or politely brush them off, like, sorry, I have a boyfriend, or sorry, I'm busy right now, I hope you find your location. We have this kind of thing, right? This sort of polite response script, but in, Eastern countries like Korea and Japan, this is something that isn't in the culture. They don't need to listen to you. They don't need to respond. Okay? So get that through your skull. Get that through your brain. Don't take it so personally, right? All right. So another question here is, if you're still learning Korean, how do you ease or relax girls' fear of English, of making a mistake, especially on the initial approach? All right, so here, something I have mentioned time and time again, common question, right, is of course learn Korean if you can, right? Get better at that. That'll help for the types that don't speak English, right? However, speaking very slowly, statements of empathy, right? I understand English is a difficult language. I know English is tough. I'm also learning Korean. It's very difficult. I understand you. I get you. We can help each other. We can speak slowly, right? Things like this, statements of empathy, showing that you understand the situation, how tough English is, and how you're, struggling through Korean. That will really, really help ultimately, right? So, yeah, statements of empathy are your friend, showing that you understand the girl and her situation are always really necessary, helpful, and empathy is ultimately something that is a characteristic of people who are socially intelligent, have good relationships, good friendships, good family connections, and good at dating, right? Good at understanding women's mind and psychology. Okay. All right. So I thought this one is a very good question, an interesting one. When did you start to get a feel for approaching girls? As in, you had a feel for how to do an ideal approach, not necessarily how they respond, but how to get good at it yourself. So I thought that was an interesting question. It's sort of like a big picture question. Like, how did I personally know when I was getting good at it? Like, how did I have a feel that I was doing shit right, that I knew what a good approach was like, and things along these lines, right? All right, so for me personally, it really took me years to get good at this, right? We're talking a few years, really 2 years, but then even longer to really feel like I totally understood everything, right? And so, mind you, I didn't have a coach. I had mentors. I had friends that I went out with. I had wingmen, so to speak, right? But we would sort of learn off of each other, and learn sort of naturally out in the field, right? Meaning the streets, the bars, the clubs, right? And so, how did I personally get a feel? Well, really a combination of things, testing out a lot of different shit, seeing out what works, seeing out what doesn't work, right? And it's also an intuitive sort of self-analysis. I mean, well, logical self-analysis in that regard, seeing what works, what doesn't, but also intuitively feeling out like what feels right in this situation. In other words, like, it's sort of like, okay, I feel good in myself, I feel good in my body, in my mind, in my voice, in my energy. When I do things this way, it feels right. And also, seeing how the girls respond. It's not always about the girl's response, of course, right? This question kind of gets to that fact, right? It's sort of like, okay, for example, speaking very soft where they can barely hear you, it's mostly going to get you blown out. Speaking very loud, it draws way too much attention and the girl's like kind of freaking out. So that's not good, right? So it's like finding that right voice projection is something that you'll feel. It's like, okay, you hit the key, you intuitively feel this is the right note, this is the right key, like playing the chord the right way on a guitar or a piano feels right. Sort of in that sense, you get that kind of right feel. And also, not only is it sort of intuitively felt, in your body, but also like when you're approaching people, you're going to have a lot more good sets when your voice is projecting, but not screaming at the person. And you're going to have a lot more overall good sets when your voice, you're going to have more, you're going to have more overall bad sets when you're screaming at them or when you're, speaking under your breath, and it's going to feel off, right? Even to you, right? And so really, not only is it a matter of really getting experience and going through trial and error process, right? But also, seeing how the results come out and also feeling it to yourself. You have to ultimately go into yourself and feel like, does this feel right? So a good example was like a long time ago. I used to speak under my breath too much, and I would feel weird about it, and I would get blown out. And then I tried the extreme end of like speaking really loud, and like everyone was staring at me, so that didn't feel right. And then it's like the right amount where I get their attention, and I'm kind of speaking, like sort of like my voice penetrates them, right? Because they can feel it. I'm giving them an experience, but it's not a shouting match and it's not a whisper match, right? And so that was like one thing. Another thing is like back in the day and everything, running around, just fully getting too close to the girls. While that would work sometimes, it was also, I could see it made girls so uncomfortable at times. And also, people in the street would walk by, they would stare at us, they would blow up the spot sometimes, right? And so, realizing that while getting close is good, you really want to look more natural in the sense that you want to transition these interactions into kind of seeming like you're just together, kind of already on a date, kind of already knowing each other. The reason for that is that it makes you comfortable, but really it's more like it makes it look more natural, but also it puts the girl at ease rather than getting, freaked out, or other people, staring at her on the street. She might be into it, but then like everyone's looking at you. You might be okay with it, but she feels sort of like judged or stared at, or like a spectacle on the street, taking up the street while people are walking by, rather than just chilling together with sort of mirrored side by side or together, already a couple or already friends kind of thing, body language, right? And it'll feel right. It'll feel like a chord is played right on a guitar, like I said, or like, anything that's like done right has that sort of feel of harmonization, so to speak, right? So that's very, very important. Okay. All right. And so one other thing is another announcement I would say is, yeah, I'm doing these Korean classes for pickup, and they've been really good so far. Everyone's really enjoying them, going out, applying. Already several students have signed up. So if you're interested in that, learning Korean, specifically for approaching girls in the street, in the daytime, in the nighttime, texting, on dates, specifically for that purpose, rather than just academic Korean or standard Korean classes, which have their place, of course. But this is a very useful course if you're interested in learning it, and you'll get a Google document with all the information so you can retain it. Even after the class, you'll have sort of a cheat sheet to review, right? So if you're interested in that, be sure to drop an email below, and we can kind of work that out. We can do it via, whatever works, either in person or via Zoom, depending on where you're at, right? And another thing is, I will probably throw around late May a seminar, which would be what a perfect first approach is, right? Sort of the elements of a first approach, both in day and night, and sort of break down those elements and go through that in seminar form. So if you're interested in that, of course, drop an email, and the location where it will be held is not disclosed yet, but later on I could email you where that seminar would be taking place, right? So you have that to look forward to. And yeah, it'll give you a good idea on, what a good first approach is, what elements, should be in the first approach, what elements should not be in the first approach, and sort of a good rubric that when you walk away, really you can kind of like review what you learned in the seminar, like where did I go wrong, what was it missing, or, what did I implement right, what was the strength, what was the strong points, and you have something kind of like to grade the approach overall after walking away from the set, right? Okay, good. And so other than that, I think we really covered all the bases here. Really been good going out, seeing guys out again. Had a lot of interesting stories this past week. Some really crazy ones that maybe I'll I will save for a future podcast some kind of unprecedented stories here these days. So, um, yeah, I'll definitely save. We'll have to do another crazy stories from the streets and clubs podcast, maybe for the next week or two. Maybe I'll leave that one for next week. So, until next time.